Hey everyone, it's Dave. I'm back with Thunder, my 1990 Miata. And today I'm going to replace a lower ball joint on the front right side. It's starting to leak a little bit. I'm not sure if it's totally failed. The one on the other side did fail and I've already replaced it. They should be replaced in pairs. So today I'm going to go catch up and do a little bit of preventive maintenance and replace the ball joint on the right. So let's get started. You're watching Dave's Auto DIY. So to remove that lower ball joint, there's a cotter pin that goes through this castle nut. I'll have to pull that cotter pin out with a pair of pliers, then loosen off that castle nut on top of the ball joint. The lower shock mount bolt has to be removed. I think I'm going to have to remove the connection for the end link there so that the lower control arm can easily swing down. Then there's a through bolt right there that attaches the lower ball joint. And there's one more bolt underneath where the shock mount, that's why you have to remove the shock bolt, because you have to lower it down, because there's one more bolt underneath that connects there for the lower ball joint. So that's a 14 millimeter on the lower bolt on the end link. It's a 17 millimeter on the lower shock mount. And it's a 17 millimeter for the through bolt on the ball joint. Then I've got to get out that cotter pin. It's hard to see here in the dark. Got the pin out. Then it's a 21 millimeter on top of that to get that castle nut off. Looks like that. This is my ball joint remover tool. You kind of pry it in between the end of a ball joint and the top, and you can press a ball joint out. I can't get it on to the lower ball joint with the steering outer tie rod in place, so I'm going to have to remove the cotter pin and the castle nut on the outer tie rod and swing that out of the way so that I have access to get that tool in on the lower ball joint. And this castle nut is also a 17. So to use this tool, you put one end, sort of pry it between the ball joint bracket and the other side on top of the ball joint bolt, and then you squeeze them together by tightening up this bolt, and the ball joint should pop out. Pop! Now with that tie rod out of the way, I can get the ball joint press onto the lower ball joint, and I'll press that one out the same way I pressed out the tie rod end. All right, change of plans. Even easier than using that tool is just hammering it out. And since I'm not reusing this ball joint, I'm not worried about damaging it in the process, so that's what I'm going to do. So with that lower ball joint removed, you can push the lower control arm down a little bit to get access to that 17 millimeter bolt that's attaching the lower ball joint to control arm. With that loose, you can pull out the old ball joint. Then you can install your new ball joint, put through the through bolt with the 17 millimeter nut, put in the bolt that it goes in underneath the shock mount, 17 millimeter, torque both of those up to between 54 and 68 foot-pounds. So I made another mistake. Wouldn't be an episode of Dave's Auto DIY if I didn't make a mistake. I put the bolt for the lower shock bolt through the through bolt for the lower ball joint, and tried to put the nut on there, and I damaged the nut. I think there must be a slightly different thread. The nut was wrecked. So I had to go out and get a new nut for the through bolt on for the lower ball joint. Turns out it's a M12 fine thread 1.5. M12 1.5. I found it in the hardware store. So I'm gonna put it back together. So lesson learned, make sure you put the right bolt back with the right nut. So we'll try this again. The through bolt on the ball joint is 54 to 69 foot-pounds. The lower shock bolt is also 54 to 69 foot-pounds. The ball joint bolt is 43 to 57 foot-pounds. The tie rod end is only 22 to 32 foot-pounds.
And I put a jack under the control arm to raise it up to line up the end link hole, and torqued up the end link to 20 foot-pounds.
And you can have to put a new cotter pin in. You can try to reuse your old cotter pins, but I wouldn't recommend it. They usually are so bent, it's pretty hard to reinstall them. So put a pin in there and then just bend the legs on the opposite side so that it won't slide out, and do the same on the ball joint. So that's it for changing the lower ball joint in a 1990 Miata. It's almost the same in a NA or an NB Miata. Just remember, keep track of your bolt so you don't make the mistake I did and try to thread the wrong nut onto the wrong bolt and damage it, and you should be all right. So I hope you learned something. I hope you hit subscribe, and I hope to see you next time on Dave's Auto DIY.